FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
We're joined by RNC Chairman Reince Priebus. Good afternoon to you.
Hey, good afternoon to you. I'm excited to be here.
I know, it's good to talk with you. I love your sticker, by the way. You have some flair now on your lapel.
I'm wearing your cool sticker, and everyone's going to know I'm a Dana fan now.
There you go. Excellent. So you always, gosh, there's so many things. I wish we had like an hour to talk. First and foremost, the filibuster on the Senate.
That's right.
Energy, breathe. So people here are excited. I'm
still excited about it, and hope you saw that I did. It wasn't just at the end that I jumped on. I wasn't. Actually, if you go back on my tweets and my Twitter feed, because I had to write back a couple of people like, hang on a second, I didn't just show up. But I thought it was great for our party.
Yeah.
I thought we had finally a little bit of a stretch where, saying the heck with this sequester scare tactic of the president.
Right.
I think Rand standing up on the Fifth Amendment and saying, wait a second, I've got an intelligent, reasonable question that isn't being answered. I will tell you, though, that, I think, and I love Lindsay to death, and I respect and love John McCain, and they know I do, but I don't agree with that. I don't agree with throwing Rand under the bus when it gets you nothing and you're a unified party. I think we got to stand up for each other.
Did it kind of surprise you? Dick Durbin seemed more polite in his debate, at least from my perspective, to Rand Paul and Cruz and all of them.
Well, I had a problem with it. Yeah. I didn't think it was right. And this is why. I'm all for growing our party. And by the way, CPAC and the Liberty Movement is one of the fastest growing parts of our party that we have. So while a lot of people, and I'm one of them, say, listen, we got to be about addition and multiplication, not division and subtraction. I know that. But that also goes to the other end as well, which means if you might not agree with Rand Paul and everything, but as a party we ought to stand up and be unified.
Right.
It goes to both sides.
Right.
And I think sometimes you only hear about the other end, which is, if you don't agree with me on marriage, then listen, I agree. One issue doesn't make someone a bad Republican. Right. But I think sometimes we have to stand up more for the Liberty Movement and the CPAC movement and all of those issues as opposed to only worrying about the other end of the spectrum.
Exactly. One of the things, in CPAC here, I'm glad that we do have all this energy because I was worried that we were all going to feel demoralized after the last election.
Yeah.
And, there are always the Sunday, the quarterbacks that always come out and say, well, this is what should have...
Monday morning
quarterback, excuse me. You know what? I need more coffee. Thank you. No, you always have those Monday morning quarterbacks, and they come out and say, well, this is what should have been done. This is what should have happened. When you look back on the election, what do you think? What would you like to see change within the Republican Party? What can the Republican Party do, especially maybe perhaps in terms of messaging, to really get out there and maybe push forward more of what we heard from, the filibuster, Rand Paul, Cruz, and them? What needs to be done?
Well, for one thing, the reason why people get excited about this recent round of folks that have risen to the top is that there is a message.
Right.
There is something to rally around. But I would say that if for me as a party chairman, I'm going to have a different view than a lot of people. Putting the candidate aside, I think clearly some unscripted moments were not helpful. But the biggest reason for me is I think we may have lost 3 years ago. And here's what I'm saying. If you're not showing up in a community for a long period of time, you're not asking for the order, you're not going to get the sale. And I think that we have as a party what I call a quality of contacts problem. In other words, we parachute in for 4 months in a huge way. And they did. Romney World made a whole ton of voter contacts by doors and phones than ever before. But we're comparing ourselves to ourselves. On the other side, they've got people in communities by the hundreds, year-round. So while we have 80 employees in 2011, Obama had hundreds in Florida alone. While we were debating each other 23 times, the other side was spending $150 million on voter data, outreach, information. It kind of tells you the story.
Right.
And so I think sometimes we are a little bit more candidate-focused, and the other side is much more cause-focused. And I think we have to start being more cause-focused and realize that the work we're doing today is going to dictate how we do in 2016. That's where we need to go as a party.
Yeah, and agreed, too. We definitely focus on candidates as opposed to issues. One of those things, of course, took place Senate race in my state. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, right.
And then, of course, Indiana as well. We had Todd Aiken.
Right.
We had Richard Murdoch.
Right.
Some of those, there were a lot of people who said, well, a lot of this perhaps could have been avoided, or maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if other people hadn't reacted so strongly to what they had said. Or, I think we could agree on people needing media training and perhaps being better up to snuff if they're going to go and speak about a topic for which they claim to be so passionate. But if you could have done anything differently, would you have done anything differently in terms of setting the tone and how people reacted to that? Or how would you caution to avoid certain instances like that going forward?
Yeah.
Because I know they're going to try this again in midterms.
I first of all, I don't know if you can avoid someone saying the types of things that Todd Aiken has said. Obviously, meaning you're not going to agree with me, but I'm just going to come out and say it. If you say something biologically stupid like that,
well,
I think there's no amount of media training that can stop someone, no matter how hard you try. But you need to have better media training. You need to make better choices as to what shows you're going on and what you're not, and what you're walking into, and what the benefit is of getting on a program for 5 minutes. What the upside is. But the other thing I'd say about this, which is different, I kind of just want to explain a little bit of why I did what I did. I'm a big believer in. I'm not awestruck by candidates. I never have been. I don't care. I care about what the cause is. I care about real, authentic people that want to serve this country with a pure heart and make a difference.
Right.
And I believe that the cause is more important than the candidate. And my view on Todd Aiken, the reason I have total peace with it, is that the cause of this country and what was at stake was in his hands. And we had a very unique law in Missouri that allowed us to interchange a different person.
Yes.
You could put just as conservative, just as cause-driven, just as everything as Todd Aiken. And all he had to do was pull himself out and put someone in and put the cause in front of himself.
Oh, yeah, we were well aware of that.
And I think sometimes our side becomes too awestruck with the person. Forget the person. What is it that we're trying to do?
Strategy.
And he could have stepped aside, and guess what? You'd have a conservative Republican in Missouri serving in the Senate. Period.
I want to switch it up
I'm
and
sorry,
ask you.
I talked too long, but-
No. I want to ask you about a topic as well, because we're going towards midterms. We know that all of our House Republicans essentially have a target on their back. This administration has been trying to use debt ceiling, sequestration, whatever it can do to divide and conquer. What is the Republican strategy to protect our House majority? And at the same time, I know you want to flip some of those Senate seats.
Right.
How are we going to keep the group essentially united? Because we have people who are saying Speaker Boehner has to go. We have talks of a civil war, all of this stuff within the Republican Party. How are we? What's the strategy to protect that House majority?
Well, I think for one thing, Paul Ryan's budget is helpful in the sense that I think it brings the entire House caucus together. I think as much as we can do to bring the House caucus together, I think that's number one. On spending, on the upcoming debt limit fight, the CR fight's going to come up again.
Yeah.
I think that's number one, keeping our House together with good bills and good strategies, and keeping our caucus strategizing with the Senate. That's number one. But number two, from my standpoint, how we're going to keep the majority in the House is we have to get together a ground operation in our party starting in the next 2 months with not just a few people down the hallway at the RNC, but what we're going to be committed to is hundreds of people across the country that are going to be committed to being in communities, branding, marketing our party, talking about what I'm a Republican because. When is the last time you ever heard that?
Right.
The fact is we've got a Republican brand that needs a lot of help. And I know we're at the Conservative Political Action Conference, but we also know that we're in a two-party system. And we need to build the brand of the Republican Party if we're going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. RNC Chairman Reince
All right.
Priebus, always a pleasure.